Welcome everyone to the next Alumni Career webinar, Energetic Intelligence and the 7 Wheels of Leadership with Kacey Cardin. I'm Maura Sweeney, the Director of Alumni Career Development at Holy Cross, and I'm delighted to welcome you to today's webinar, offered exclusively for Holy Cross graduates. We'll be together for an hour today, and after the formal presentation, Kacey will take questions from you for as long as time allows. If you've participated in these webinars in the past, then you'll quickly see that this one will be very, very different from what we've usually done, and I'm very excited about that. So this will be an interactive webinar, and we want to hear from you. So to ease your participation, I want to point out the features on your control panel that we'll be using today. First, we'll use the chat feature a lot, and we'll prompt you to submit thoughts throughout the presentation. When you respond, please, if you're comfortable, adjust the audience so you respond to everyone. We hope that this will be a group discussion and we can learn from one another in addition to learning from Kacey. I also encourage you to submit questions through that same chat function. In this case, you can submit them directly to me, Maura Sweeney, and during the Q&A portion at the end of the presentation, I'll pose those questions to Kacey. And finally, we will offer the opportunity for participants to come off of mute and chat directly with Kacey. In order to do this, I'll ask you to raise your hand to speak and I'll unmute your mic for you. You can find the raise hand button by clicking on the participants tab. Finally, if you look in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see that you can toggle back and forth between different presentation views. This might be useful for you during different parts of the presentation, depending on what's happening and what you're interested in seeing. This presentation is recorded and it'll be made available on the Alumni Career Development website, usually next week. Now it's my pleasure to introduce you to Kacey. Kacey Cardin is a dynamic coach and leadership development consultant who partners with executives and top performers in multinational finance and law firms, nonprofits, small businesses in tech and hospitality, and creative leaders in the TV, film, and music industries. She has recently led workshops for the Country Music Association, Conference for a Cause, Creative Mornings, and Vanderbilt University. Kacey created Chakralesque, a movement and energy-based workout for body, mind, and spirit. In conjunction, she developed the 7 Wheels of Leadership, a system that teaches leaders how to source energetic intelligence along with their innate intellectual and leadership skills to maximize their impact and fulfillment. She's currently writing a book on her energetic intelligence work, and today she's going to lead us through some of the foundational concepts and give us a few of her favorite tips and tools for how to be an energetically intelligent leader. And that's a hard one to say, so I'm sure you've practiced that quite a lot, Kacey. With that, I'll hand things over to Kacey.
Thank you so much. I am so happy to speak with you all today. I am always honored to present to leaders who are hungry for growth and development, but I was especially drawn to the Holy Cross community because we share a mission to be for and with others. To me, that means being leaders who can bridge various viewpoints and backgrounds, who can be patience, curiosity, respect, and connection between diverse and divergent belief systems. As she said, I work as an executive and leadership coach for people who want to bring more authenticity, connection, and integration of humanity and divinity to their leadership. The leaders I coach are committed to creating maximum impact in the world, and sometimes it can be challenging to balance their home and work commitments or their personal and professional ways of relating to themselves and other people, especially concerning spirituality in a secular setting. In my experience, divine leadership and energetic intelligence go hand in hand. Today, we will operate from the assertion that who you be is how you lead, and who you be is who you lead. A quick note on logistics. I'm going to try to toggle back and forth between some screen shares and some notes and some Q&A. So you may see me occasionally kind of getting the moving pieces together over here. This approach is, I really prefer doing interactive work, but the screen sharing slide thing is not always my most graceful mode here. So bear with me while I work on that. And some of these slides may be unnecessary, but let's look at them anyway. They're pretty. So who you be is how you lead, and who you be is who you lead. Many leaders craft a successful professional persona that at some point leads to burnout because as they grow and develop, they'd like their leadership presence to evolve as well, but it can feel risky to integrate all parts of yourself into all parts of your life. I certainly have firsthand experience of that particular struggle. I'll show you some pictures here. Prior to being a coach, I worked for a decade as a professional opera singer. From the outside, I seemed to be having the time of my life. I was traveling, performing in wonderful projects, creating an exciting career that was exactly what I said I wanted. But inside, I had lost touch with myself, which made it impossible to connect with other people. Both on and off stage, I was hiding and protecting myself and my image. I woke up one morning and realized that the success I was building was based on being whoever I thought someone else needed me to be. My anxiety was outweighing my enjoyment, and honestly, I was lonely. Let's stop this screen share here so while I'm telling you this vulnerable story about myself, you can actually see me. I knew in my career a lot of wealthy, well-known, very lonely people. And I decided I didn't want to keep working so hard to become one of them. So I hired a coach to help me re-empower my career. And then in a very surprising career shift, I ended up going back to school to become a coach myself. And what I learned through my coach training mixed with energy work that I had studied for over 20 years completely transformed my life in leadership roles. Today, I still perform on occasion. I still have an agent. I've written and produced 2 off-Broadway shows in New York. I live in New York and Nashville with a wonderful partner. I've helped train hundreds of other coaches, and I run an international private practice, making a difference in people's lives by helping them remember who they really are so they can create what they really want. Before we dive into the tools today, I want you all to think, take a moment to think for yourselves about your own leadership superpowers and your biggest gaps, and write down your answers. Today's webinar, like any great coaching session, is going to require a certain degree of introspection and self-evaluation. Like she said, we'll have some opportunities to share, to receive feedback in the moment, but with a group at this size, it's going to be, nearly impossible to provide the depth and breadth of coaching that I would in a one-on-one or small group setting. But we do want to invite you to share in certain moments. Regarding sharing, a quick foundational piece: is there anyone who cannot align with maintaining confidentiality in today's webinar? This may be a time to raise your hand or to excuse yourself if you just cannot contain yourself and you need to share people's confidential details. It's probably not the best place for you. I don't anticipate anything, too confronting to come up in what we're going to look at today, but I do want us to be respectful of each other's space. As a coach, especially, I work with people who are sharing intellectual property or who are sharing big goals or sometimes sharing some emotional content. And I just want to invite us all to be really respectful of anything that might be shared today. If you have a great experience or you learn something for yourself, by all means, go out and share that in the world. Ideally, you're going to be able to use these tools continuously for your own reflection and self-mastery, and you can bring what you see about your gaps and goals to your own coaches. If you don't yet have a coach of your own, please feel free to reach out for referrals or support. I want to be really clear right off the bat, I'm not here to sell you anything today, but I do want you to know that I'm here if you want support or if you need more information. So I'll share my information at the end, and I invite you all to reach out if you have any questions that don't get addressed on the webinar today. So a little bit more about the concepts in my background so you know what you're about to get yourself into. I work with clients all over the world from various religious backgrounds, belief systems, levels of leadership. Some common traits of my typical clients that you might also share: they have huge hearts that they don't always take to work with them. No matter how much they achieve, and they achieve a lot, it's never enough or they're never enough. So I hear a lot of imposter syndromes and not enoughs. I've found that imposter syndrome is one of the top 7 ways that leaders block their own power. In fact, about 70% of people will experience imposterism at some point in their lives. And I'd like us all to have more tools to combat the self-doubt, self-sabotage, and the loss of productivity that can accompany it. My plan for today is that we take a look at the top 7 blockages to impactful leadership and how to utilize energetic intelligence to remove them so that you're operating at your highest capability. I imagine that many of you, like most of my clients, are high performers, successful in your field. All of us have leadership assets, and we'll look at how to strengthen those. we all also have gaps, and we'll look at how to close those. Now, there's a lot to learn and discuss about the scientific and psychological research regarding how we capitalize on our energetic resources. But for today, we're going to look at how you can immediately benefit from 7 points of energetic intelligence with your intention and attention, regardless of religious or spiritual belief system or the nature of your workplace and your position. I say that my work is where the woo-woo meets the to-do. So energetic intelligence blends facilitative and ontological coaching and leadership development with some concepts rooted in chakra theory. You are almost certainly familiar with IQ, your cognitive intelligence, and EQ, your emotional intelligence. Energetic intelligence, or show you another slide over here, NQ or ENQ, there we go, as it's referred to in my work, encompasses both of those, as well as how we use our energy in bioenergetic exchange. It's built on the foundational assertion that your energy speaks before you do. Your NQ is the integration of the physical, mental, and energetic bodies that each of us are made up of. Now, chakra theory states that there are 7 major centers of energy within all of us that correspond to specific points along the spinal column and govern various emotions, hormones, bodily functions, all sorts of things. The word chakra translates to wheel. So I've utilized the idea of 7 energetic wheels to give us a systematic, holistic check-in for ourselves and the people we influence. Again, regardless of spiritual background, consider that where attention goes, energy flows. So the 7 wheels of energetic intelligence will train you to be aware of your own energy, attention, and intention, and will serve as a guide for you to adjust your energy and being so the impact you're having in the world is aligned with what you want it to be. Now, we're going to look at an overview of the 7 wheels of energetic intelligence. And in this slide, you'll see how they correspond to the 7 major chakras just as a reference point. So take a moment to read through these while you revisit what you wrote down earlier as your superpowers and your kryptonite. As an energetically intelligent leader, you will find yourself called to lead and develop others who mirror both your strengths and your gaps. And your work is to always take full responsibility for what shows up. When someone presses your buttons, that's your cue that you've got some internal work to do. When someone is especially drawn to you, that might be an indicator that you share some innate qualities that they likely need some support in bringing to the surface in their own lives. So these are all leadership opportunities. Someone who is drawn to your courage or your vulnerability, for instance, which as you can see here might relate to the heart or the solar plexus or the throat. Someone drawn to your courage and vulnerability, and for whom that might be somebody who fears getting vulnerable themselves. So it might be a massive leadership breakthrough for them to do so, and you get to call them forth. Now, on the other side, someone who especially gets under your skin as, I don't know, the ones that poke at me the most are people who are arrogant or who show up as kind of whiny. Those are a mirror for you, for your version of those same qualities. We'll talk a little bit more about radical responsibility. That's a part of the 7 wheels. What it means is that you're always aware of the energy that's running through you and how it will impact other people. We are all mirrors for each other. So take a good hard look in that mirror and get clear on what these 7 wheels hold for your own growth and your continued development. I specifically chose to keep the word wheels because I visualized them turning in whatever direction might be needed to open or close the faucet of that particular energetic flow. So we'll go through each one and get a little more specific about what it means for each one. But you'll notice your energy might be too opened or too closed, too much or too little. I'll give you an example. Let's take an arrogant coworker. We'll call him John. John's 3rd wheel, the solar plexus. Let's see, I can bring this back up for you so you can take a look. I'm going to put up a slide that actually shows all of the blocks so you can kind of start to wrap your head around what I mean by this. So let's consider John. John's 3rd wheel, the solar plexus, which controls self-confidence, might be too open. Or his 7th wheel, the connection to divine or to a higher purpose, might be completely closed off. I'll go back and show you all of these together here. Perhaps his heart and his solar plexus haven't both been accessed together in a while. Clearly, there are several combinations to consider, and through this work, you will learn to ask particular questions to get John present to his strengths and gaps, as well as some exercises that will help both of you tap into all 7 at once. Now, John's energy, of course, is ultimately up to him. The brilliance of NQ, is that you learn how your own energy is impacting the people around you. So again, let's go back to John as our example here. Perhaps his overactive third wheel triggers one of your wheels to stop spinning or to go into overdrive. Maybe your heart closes off and you start comparing your results to John's results. Or maybe your first wheel stops spinning and you find yourself feeling insecure in the face of all of that overconfidence that he brings. Or the first wheel goes into overdrive and you suddenly are very self-righteous whenever he shows up. And you are very right about all those things that he is very arrogant and cocky about. Tapping into your own heart or your higher purpose and bigger commitments in your interactions with John will start to impact you both. Sometimes the shift happens in an instant. And sometimes, especially in longer term relationships, it might take several interactions before you start to create a different energetic connection. So we're going to dive deeper into each one. And what I will tell you is that if you consciously practice this work consistently, you will get to a point, at least my goal for this work, is that 90% of the time or more, you're leading from a sense of authenticity, trust, and joy that comes from knowing that who you are and what you're doing in your life is fully aligned. You will be modeling energetically intelligent leadership, which means you're living a life that allows you to be fully expressed everywhere and create space for other people to do the same. Now, let me share this again. We're going to dive into each one individually, but I want to give you all a chance to really look through the different blocks and the ways that they show up. And again, we'll go through them one by one. And then what it looks like where they're actually fully aligned and empowered and who that has you be and where your attention is flowing in that case. Let's start with the first wheel. The first wheel is your root. This is the very foundation of who you are. This is where you distinguish your humanity through the lens of your surviving self or your thriving self. Who are you? And you take a moment to think about this for yourself and maybe write down some answers as we go. This is a part where I will ask you all to share in a moment, so prepare yourselves. Who are you when you are motivated by fear? Who are you when you are safe and secure and fully accepting of yourself and other people, or motivated by love? If this first wheel is stuck, you may have issues with anxiety. You may feel like an outcast in your family or your business. A blocked first wheel is also the place to look if you have chronic financial problems. And physically, issues with this first wheel may manifest as arthritis, knee and foot problems, and even hemorrhoids. That's right. We're talking about hemorrhoids as a leadership issue now, you guys. If you've ever had them, you cannot tell me it's not a power leak. It is very hard to feel fully in your power if you're having issues with your feet or your rear end, all right? So again, look at these two lists. I'm going to share them again. Now, if you read these, you probably like to think that you're a thriving leader. All of us do, right? But if we followed you around for a day, it is highly likely we'd see maybe some, I don't know, some righteous, some predictability, some avoiding pain and discomfort. Anybody feeling familiar with a few of these on the left-hand side over there? So right here, right now, we're actually going to have you choose the foundation of your thriving leadership. I'm going to give you an example of some words here. Another slide for you to see. Can everybody see these slides? Okay, Mara, can you nod for me if you can see these? Okay, great, thank you. I'm trying to see all the things at once on my screen over here. So you can choose words from this list or you can create your own. But the trick is to choose words that are states of being, energetic states of being. And these are ways of being that will provide a touchstone for your unique flavor of energetic intelligence. All of us have our very own version of what this is. And it's great. It means that there are so many different versions of leadership. Not all leaders are, they don't look exactly the same way. You may have some leadership role models, and it may be interesting to look at what words you would use to describe their energy and their ways of being, and see which ones you're drawn to and what you want to bring more into your life. My personal words are joy, power, grace, and beacon. I'm going to stop this and find out if any of you would be willing to share your words. To share, if you could choose 3 to 5 words to be the foundation of your energetic leadership, what would they be? And we'll have you raise a hand, and then Mara will unmute you so you can share with us. One of those wheels is around vulnerability, so this is your chance to practice it before we even get there. There are definitely no right or wrong answers. Okay, great. We have grace, authenticity, and trust from Dawn. Thank you. And these words are important. This is going to be the foundation that you will look through for all of the rest of the wheels. And I'll have you come back and reflect on these, including when we get to that solar plexus and we start talking about action steps and how you relate to the doing during the day. It's going to be really important that you've made a conscious choice about who you want to be about the doing. Great, we're getting some good ones. Calm in a storm, partnership, authenticity, wit, partnership. Beautiful. Now, as you're thinking of these, and by all means, please keep sharing in the chat. This is great, and it's going to probably get other people's wheels turning about who they want to be when they start seeing who everybody else wants to be. This is great. Your thriving self will actually beget others' thriving self. And we'll talk about how when you're rooted in your thriving self, you'll actually start to see other people's essence a little bit more. Now, the surviving self is not inherently bad. It just doesn't always take you where you want to go as a leader. It's intended to keep you safe. It's super predictable. I practice this work on a daily basis, and there are plenty of choice points during the day where I get righteous or feel shame or get attached to stuff. The work is in who you choose to be when those things show up. So you get to choose to come back to this thriving self. Great. And yeah, keep them coming. Oh, you guys are great. I love this. And when your first wheel is spinning properly, you'll find that you're grounded, connected to your thriving self, and as I said, other people's. If we go back to our friend John from my example earlier, from a healthy first wheel, you'll relate to him as his thriving self, which might be something like power, brilliance, creation, voice. To support having a healthy first wheel, let's talk about what you can do once you've gotten clear on what your words are. I'll share my screen again here. Your first wheel, again, is humanity. This is like proper care and feeding of yourself as a human being. So the tools for this one are really back to basic. First and foremost is a well-being checklist. And I mean an actual checklist, like a grid that you can put little check marks or gold stars in. This is for items that would make a difference in your physical, mental, emotional well-being that you historically have not been reliable to attend to regularly. I've worked with clients who needed to put flossing on there. I worked with one guy who was so busy that he had to put toothbrushing on his well-being checklist. I'm not kidding you. This guy was on TV. Like, he was out in front of the world all the time, but he was so busy that sometimes he just forgot because he was so worried about other people. So make sure you have a checklist and you're actually checking in. One of the easiest for this wheel is exercise. Are you physically moving your body? Are you hydrated? Are you sleeping? Are you taking care of this physical home for your spirit? Putting your feet on the ground, actual earth, grass, getting outside. Made myself a note here. Leaders need just as much time to recharge as their iPhones do. So make sure you're taking a moment to breathe, get some sun and some fresh air, kick off your shoes and just relax into being a human for a little while. Another tool is to distinguish surviving versus thriving in thought, word, and action. And this is going to come into play in each of the 7 wheels, but since we just talked about surviving versus thriving, use the first wheel as your reminder to come from this in your thought, word, and deed. If you practice nothing else from this entire webinar, that is a game changer. Another tool is your integrity list. You can practice this right now as well. Take a minute to write down a list of anything in your life, relationships, or your business that is not aligned with or does not reflect your best self. That might mean bills that are overdue, relationships that need attention or repair, projects that are running behind or unfinished, anything that is a power leak. Write it all down and commit to crossing one thing off this list every day until you are fully in integrity. Energetically intelligent leadership requires that you are consistently plugging any power leaks. And a lot of us kind of overlook what these are. We get used to a version of humanity that's like, oh, I'm only human. I can only do so much. Yes, I'm running 5 minutes late, or yeah, that bill is 2 days behind, or whatever it is. These are actually all power leaks and they're distractions. Your brain can't help but have a little bit of energy flow into that breakdown. So make your list. And lastly, the one I'll give you today is financial health. You cannot be a powerful leader if your business is not taken care of, if your basic needs are not being met. So if any of you on this call do not currently have a budget spreadsheet or an app of some sort that keeps track of your finances, that has you know on any given day what's coming in versus what's going out, no shame, but this is a place to get it into integrity. If you're consistently, I'll put in one more note here and then we're going to move on, but if you're consistently spending beyond your means, take a look at how your sense of self and security, this first wheel, is impacting your spending. And also as we go through, if finances are always an issue for you, take a look at what other of the 7 wheels might support a healthier financial life for you. Let's move on to the second wheel. Oh, did I share the wrong screen? Yes, I did. Pardon me. 1 second. There we go. Your second wheel. This is creativity and pleasure. If this wheel is stuck, you might experience emotional numbness or a lack of creativity. When it's overactive, you may struggle with addiction or overindulgence. Issues with this wheel can manifest physically as sexual dysfunction or even being overly triggered by other people's energy. A lot of us have experienced trauma that we hold in this wheel and in this part of our energetic body. When it's balanced and aligned, you are creative. You experience joy and pleasure in balance with all of the other emotions. How many of you have achieved something big only to feel like you don't deserve it or that it's not okay to celebrate it, at least for not more than like 5 minutes? A lot of these videos are off, so I can't see you, but feel free to tap into the chat bar if this is a familiar experience for you. Thank you, nodding. Yes, all right. One of the practices that I put down for your second wheel is celebrating your wins. Let me show you this. Show this here. My partner and I actually, I keep touching the wrong one. Sorry. My partner and I actually have a win wall in our house. Every time we win, every time we achieve something, we write it on a colorful little Post-it note. We have 3 years worth of wins that we can see anytime we look at this wall in our house. It's so fun. And it immediately energizes the part of me that from trauma or from survival mode gets really scared that it's not safe to celebrate myself and my work. Can you guys imagine the impact if I brought that energy onto the webinar today? It really doesn't serve you at all, and it doesn't serve me. So why would you not go out into the world fully celebrating yourself, your creative power, and the joy of being alive? If you are a leader who has been called stoic or reserved or even stuffy, this wheel and the fourth wheel, which we'll get to in a minute, are some places for you to look for more balance and effectiveness. Other tools for this one, which you might have noticed on that slide, are adult recess. I encourage daily playtime. I don't care if it's a 5-minute office dance party or an hour at the dog park, whatever it is, and no matter how hard you're working and how long your to-do list is, give yourself some permission to enjoy your life. I actually almost require, I will say encourage, but it's almost a requirement for my clients that they take a vacation quarterly. Every single quarter, they are unplugging, hopefully for a week. And I definitely have them set aside at least 2 entire days a week to unplug from work. Doesn't have to be on the weekend. A lot of us have, various schedules these days, but 2 days to totally unplug and just enjoy being a person. Let's go on to the third wheel. I want to be mindful of the time, and I want to make sure that you guys have a chance to ask some questions about these and personalize it for you. Your third wheel is the center of competence and your willingness to take aligned action. And I want to really hit the point of aligned action. This is not the wheel of busy work. Very few people wake up and say, I want life to be arduous and stressful today. Yet we go through the day so focused on checking off boxes that, you can end up feeling like you worked really hard, didn't get very far, and definitely are not lit up about any of it. So how do you practice integration in a way that actually drives results? It requires the being and the doing. An overactive third wheel creates overwhelm. I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with that feeling. An underactive third wheel will have you daydreaming, stuck in the 6th and 7th wheel with no action on your vision. So I have all of my clients practice these 2 things. Frame the day. This says your top 4. It should be your top 3. I'll give you your choice. I've practiced 3, 4, and 6, to be totally honest with you guys. I've practiced several. 6, in my opinion, allows you to bite off a little more that you can chew. Oh, somebody said toddlers are great play breaks. I love it. Yes, spend time with your children. That is an excellent second wheel activity. Thank you for putting that in, Michael. Overactive third wheel, biting off more than you can chew. I suggest frame the day in your top 3, not 4, not 6, but 3. You decide. Frame the day means that you are choosing, it's kind of like a work of art. Your day is the work of art. You choose the frame. Who will you be? What is your intention and what's the energy that you'll bring to the entire day? Then inside of that frame, what are the top 3 results you'll create by the end of the day, or the top 3 actions that will move the needle toward your most impactful goal? And your most impactful goal relates to the 6th and 7th wheel, which we'll get to. The top 3, they could be a phone call, an important email response, finalizing a contract, having a critical conversation, but all of the doing takes place inside of the being that you chose. So if your frame for the day is grace, for instance, and you hit a snag in finalizing that contract, you choose and empower your next action steps and your approach from a place of grace. That is not predictable and automatic for most of us. Everybody with me on that? Normally, if I hit a snag, I'm going into panic and do whatever it takes. And, I'm likely to get not in my thriving self. We'll put it that way. We'll put it nicely. So, like I said, top 3 keeps you in action, but ensures that you aren't just playing around with busy work and taking action just because it makes you feel important and stuff like that. You're actually taking the actions that matter. Let's see, are there any more? We've talked about, let me just make sure I give you the ones that I find most important. I also have pause to move forward on there. That's fairly counterintuitive for a lot of us if we have an overactive third wheel, which most high performers do. We are doers. But when you find yourself in that place of overwhelm, just when it seems like there's no way you have enough time in the day to get it all done, that is when you most need to take a little breather. That is when you most need to check back in with that first wheel, go outside for 2 minutes, whatever it is, but actually pause to move yourself forward faster. Let's go to the 4th wheel. 4th wheel is your heart. Your heart is the connection and the bridge between your humanity and your divinity. We're starting to move upward a little bit. You've got your root and your foundation and your feelings and all these sensations and the action of being a human, but your heart is where divinity starts to filter in. And it's also your connectedness to other people. So when this one is underactive, you are probably disconnected from why the things you're doing actually matter to you. This is where, I'll give you an example. I had a client who, I nicknamed him the Tin Man. He barked orders at everybody. He got a lot of things done, but he was actually pretty miserable and none of his employees felt valued. He managed thousands of people. And he showed up saying, productivity and profit are down and my romantic relationship is basically in the toilet. So we looked through the lens of the 7 wheels. He brought awareness and action to all 7. And this man saw results in just a week. He saw different results at work and at home. He had employees come up and say, you gave a presentation where I actually got to see a little of who you are and to see a little of your heart. And this one person in particular shared, it was the first time in 10 years that they'd felt like he actually cared who they were as a person and actually cared that they showed up to work that day, and for them, if you manage teams, especially, it gets your people present to the fact that it's not just a job. that they're there for some bigger things, that yes, they need that paycheck, but that paycheck is to take care of their family. So you have them show up with that level of intention and that energy, and it's going to radically shift who they show up as for and with you. So your heart, as much as, especially in business conversations, people can kind of be like, yeah, my heart doesn't belong here. It's too mushy for business. But this is actually a really impactful place to look if you find yourself stuck in some of your business or in your professional relationships. Some of the practices for this, get over here, radical compassion. Take a look, and this is something to take a look at in your life right now. Where are you disconnected from, or maybe blaming other people for things that aren't working, or for some of your gaps that could use some radical compassion for them and for yourself? Check your connection. Are you actually connected to yourself and other people? Are you freely giving and receiving love and support? A lot of us are also very generous leaders, but we aren't always willing to receive support or receive love or receive acknowledgement. And while it can feel very heroic and grand and, can feel important sometimes, or it can have you feel like it's a source of strength, it's actually kind of a power league. And you'll notice when you start to martyr yourself, and not take any support and love, it starts to slow you down after a while. I strongly recommend a daily practice of giving and receiving acknowledgement. And that could be anything from a small compliment to letting somebody know that you appreciate a job well done, something like that. You can keep it simple, or you can do something big, like writing a thank you note to one of your heroes, writing a letter of acknowledgement to somebody who really impacted you in your leadership. Another one, when the heart is blocked or slowed down, you might find that you are constantly comparing yourself to others, or you get stuck in jealousy. I recommend that you reframe comparison as inspiration. There's clearly something in it for you if you're that drawn to somebody and you're always checking out what they're up to. And, I don't know if any of the rest of you get hung up on this in the social media world, but I know I certainly do. So take a look at what about them actually inspires you, and let that inform your heart. Let that inform your actions. Let that inform your speaking. You're likely starting to notice how all of the 7 wheels can impact each other. So as we go through here, I hope you're taking notes around which ones could use a little more attention or a little more love. Let's get to the 5th. This is the center of your authentic expression. And a lot of times we automatically think of this as our speaking and how we present ourselves, but it's just as much about your listening. Something that I think is one of the most important things to notice is what you automatically listen for in the world and what you automatically speak for. And this goes back to filtering through survival or thriving self. Your surviving self probably listens for, here's one that shows up often with people I work with. They listen for ways they can help. They listen for things they can fix, Not only does it have them constantly showing up in a particular way with people that at some point is not actually the most authentic approach, but it has them shutting down some other parts of themselves. So getting very clear on your own filters. I always say, clean your filter. If you're speaking or listening through a dirty filter, it is not going to have the impact that you intend. And it's going to have people question, what are you really up to over there? People can't always tell what is off with you energetically, but that feeling when you're talking to somebody and you're like, something's wonky here. Something's going on here. I don't know what it is, but I don't believe this just yet. So this wheel is quite important, actually. A great tool for owning this, give this slide back to you here. A great tool for this is what I call owning your story so it doesn't own you. Now, science has actually proven that writing things down allows your brain to let it go. So I train my clients to practice a quick written clearing every single morning, as well as before any important meetings, any big events, or if you're a person who has a habit of taking your work home with you, you might practice a written clearing before you leave work for the day, so that when you get home, your energy is the energy that you really are committed to bringing to your home life or to your family or to your partner. So what this looks like in practice is that you're actually writing down any judgments, any fears, any interpretations that you have started to see as the capital T truth in your world. You're writing them down, and then you're getting really clear on what is a fact and what's just an interpretation. And if you find that some of those interpretations don't serve you, I actually like to physically cross them out on my paper. And all I'm left with are some facts, and then you get to decide who you want to be about it, which again goes back to that thriving self. It gives you access to who you actually are again, outside of whatever dirt was getting into your filter. One other one is to practice speaking to what's working and what you want more of. As humans, we tend to bond over our complaints. Oh my goodness, it's one of our favorite ways to automatically connect with people. Did you see the traffic today? Can you believe this rain? It's just so easy to go there, and the energy it creates is usually not that helpful and not that energizing. So I want to invite you to actually practice speaking to what is working in your life and what you want more of. And I will tell you right off the bat, your survival self is going to go a little bananas with this because it can feel really vulnerable. It can feel really weird because people are used to talking about, the stuff that doesn't work. And especially if you're one of those people who automatically listens for what you can fix, this is going to be extra weird for you. What is your value if there are no problems to fix? Who do you get to be when nothing is wrong? It's going to likely require a recalibration of how you show up. But if you practice it and if you are conscious about it, you will uncover a whole new level of authenticity and connection with people, and a feeling of mutual appreciation. The sixth wheel is your intuition and your inner wisdom. This is where your self-trust lives. In chakra theory, this is called your third eye. And I like to physically get in touch with mine sometimes. I have a tendency to be an overthinker. Analysis paralysis is a very familiar place to sit in my world. That means that this wheel is turning way too much, or that I'm really shut down. There are a lot of, you'll see on this slide, there are a lot of things this actually regulates. This is the part of you that actually regulates your sleep cycle. Get to some practices here. This is a great place. There's a lot of talk about meditation and mindfulness. And for some of us, prayer, that includes prayer. This wheel is highly impacted by that. Giving yourself time to sit and check in with yourself. You'll notice at the bottom of this note, trust your intuition over their reputation. This is huge in energetic intelligence. You know what it means when you get a feel for somebody, or when you just something doesn't feel quite right. If you're using all of these wheels, that means first you have to make sure your filter is clean. Are you putting something on there? Are you projecting something onto that person that isn't theirs? So you have to check there first, but always go back to your intuition, your gut, your inner wisdom. Are you trusting that? Another very important tool for this wheel, I call the trust triangle. You'll see that toward the end there. The trust triangle means that you are simultaneously, it's a little, if you draw a triangle out on your paper, actually I'll have you guys do this right now. It's a great note and a great reminder to have. Draw a little triangle for yourself. At the top of the triangle, write spirit. And then on one side of the bottom, write self. And on the other side, write others. And start to notice how often throughout the day are you actually empowering all three sides of that triangle at the same time. Most of us tend to empower one, maybe two, but very rarely are we fully trusting ourselves, spirit, and other people all at the same time. This one, I would be interested to hear back from you. If you take this away and practice this for a week, I would love to hear some of the impact that it has in your lives. Seventh wheel, this one's also, I keep saying, oh, this one's important, this one's important. Clearly all seven are important. Your seventh wheel is the center of your connection to something bigger than you. Think of this as energy shooting out of the crown of your head, and also sort of your transmitter between you and whatever divinity means to you. For some people, that's God. For some people, it's universe, whatever it means. For some people, it just means your community. But it's your attunement to something that's higher and greater than just yourself and your ego. This means that you are committed to the highest good of all beings, not just yourself. It requires you to be mindful. It requires you to be very present to, again, that trust triangle, self, others, and spirit. Are you committed to all three of those at the same time? And then on a practical level, this is also your mission, your vision, and your goals. Have a goal that is bigger than your fear. Part of the power in coaching is that we're always coaching towards big projects, big goals. They are intended to drive up that surviving self. They are intended to push your buttons a little bit. And your work with the seventh wheel is that you always get to come back to those highest commitments as the North Star. They are more important than the snags you run into. They are more important than the traffic or the weather or the cranky coworker or any of that other stuff. So there's a practice for you all right now. And if any of you are willing to share, it would be great to hear what you're actually up to in the world. What are some of your North Star commitments? What are some of your biggest goals right now, either for the week or for the year or for your life? I don't know. Like, for instance, I'm working on a book right now. That's a huge North Star commitment. You better believe it brings up all of my survival stuff. Not enough time. What if I'm not smart enough? I mean, I could go, the list goes on and on and on. And the choice every single day to choose my schedule and to choose who I communicate with based on that North Star goal is big. Great. Coaching technical people to be effective leaders. Great. Hopefully you've gotten some good practices in this and some places to be aware of. And I imagine that I'd actually be interested to hear what some of the measurables are for that. And here's, this is probably the most coachy that we'll get in this conversation for right now, but around your higher mission and vision, get really specific. And that's what I mean when I say have a goal that's bigger than your fear. It's nice enough for me to say, oh, I want to write a book. That feels pretty good. Like my sixth and my seventh wheel, my heart are spinning, I'm into it. The minute I have to say by when I will write that thing and exactly how many pages it will be, holy moly, that's a whole different ballgame. So put some by wins on these goals that you are sharing. And if any of you would be willing to go ahead and add that in the chat, that would be a really fun conversation to see, what does it mean when the technical people are more effective leaders? What are the measurables? What are the results? What's the impact it will have on the world for them to show up that way? Finding a job that will accommodate your commitment to your dad. So you've got some competing commitments. You've got multiple commitments in your space. Who is that going to require you to be from your thriving self to actually empower them at the same time and create the exact result you want by when you want to create it? So you might say, I want to have a job by May 1st that includes this, and this, so that it can also be my commitments over here. And then take a look at which of these 7 wheels also need to be empowered and in place to have it go that way. And you'll start to create some very specific action steps. And then you get to decide energetically who you want to be about those action steps to really bring it to life. I really wish, this is the part where I wish that we could talk to everybody like one-on-one and really hear, what you're up to. And again, I invite you all to keep putting some of this in the chat bar. You never know when you put something in the chat, you just don't know what it's going to open up for somebody else and what it might inspire for somebody else to work on. So by all means, keep sharing. I am going to show you a quick, what I call the Roygbiv Check-In, which is a very quick way to check in on all these 7 wheels at the same time. This is how I memorize the wheels, the same way I memorized colors when I was in elementary school. And they correspond, again, this is kind of inspired by chakra work. They go back to the colors and these 7 major parts. They're, like I said, located along the spine. And I did this check-in today before we got on this webinar. I did it when I woke up this morning, when I was tired and groggy and didn't really want to get out of bed at 6 a.m. I mentally went through this check-in to get present to what it is that has me wake up every morning, what is important to me in this world, and who do I want to be? So you can take this on very quickly. Am I rooted in myself? Am I rooted in humanity? And again, you'll remember the specifics of each wheel. So inside your head, you're also, you're thinking, okay, is my life in integrity? Is everything handled from a functional, physical, human standpoint? O, am I open to creativity? Am I open to celebrating? Am I open to enjoying my life? The Y is yes, I can. Confident, sufficient, aligned action. The G is green light love, giving and receiving. B is believing, expressing, and hearing from authenticity. Again, remembering to clear that filter, be very present to what energy is in your space, and is it what you are committed to? I, my intuition is empowered. V, present to my vision, my mission, my connection to something bigger than myself. So let's take a couple of minutes for some questions.
Oh, fantastic. We have so many questions that have come in from registration, so I'll start with those. And for everyone who's on the call, by all means, use that chat feature. You can send the question to everyone. You can send it just to me, and I'll read it along to Kacey if you don't, want your name associated with it. I promise to maintain confidentiality. But one of the first questions that came up is, any best practices for being an effective leader as a fully remote employee? And I know, unfortunately, with the coronavirus, this is something that is becoming real for a lot of people all of a sudden.
Oh, that is a great question. And many of you probably are already formulating your own responses to this based on some of the exercises I've shared. So I may be repeating some information, but and I work from a home office, so this one is very familiar to me. I'll use my book as an example. I can't tell you the amount of times that I have thought, wow, this would be a great time to clean out the refrigerator. This would be a perfect time. That microwave hasn't been scrubbed in months. Let's take a look over there.
Yeah.
So, as a remote employee, it can be, I hear from a lot of people that who work in that situation, it can be very easy to kind of get lost in some of your competing commitments of who you want to be at home and who you want to be for your employer, or for your job, or for yourself if you're self-employed. So getting really present each day, this would be a great place to utilize the frame the day tool, right? Yeah. Deciding who you actually want to be today at work, and then what are the top things that will actually move the needle for you. Yep. Cleaning out the microwave clearly is not going to move the needle towards my big project. So as much as I'm tempted to procrastinate and self-sabotage, energetically intelligent, no, not the choice to make. So it does require a lot of conscious choice. This work is not necessarily easy. It's all well and good to say we know what we're supposed to do. And the wheels are intended to just give you a little extra structure to empower those choices that might not always be the most comfortable one, but getting you present to what it's about. So, and again, I'll touch on for the remote employee, especially getting really present to what your work is actually for. It can be hard when you don't have coworkers looking over your, desk, or a boss who could come into your office and look over your shoulder at any time. It's really important that you get present to why you do what you do. Maybe your paycheck is so you can take a quarterly vacation, or so that you do have the space and the time to write your book or share your knowledge in some other way. So really getting present to why it matters.
Great.
Oh, somebody else just put in, as a remote employee, connecting effectively with coworkers.
Yeah.
That's a great one. And that could even be, it's a fourth wheel activity, right? It's a heart and also a second wheel requirement that you're actually making some time to connect, that it's actually a priority. So some days you might find that could be one of your top three, connecting with, Jan, who I haven't talked to all week. It's actually really important for my heart, or for my enjoyment, or to move a project forward. It's important that I connect with this person. So putting connection as just as important as some other doing that might check off a box and be faster, but not be as impactful.
Great. And I know another person asked too, if you have trouble identifying which wheel is off, what do you do next? And you talked a little bit about, what some of those blocks are, but I'm sure there are some people who, even seeing that, aren't quite sure how to take that first step.
That's a great question too. I think, let's see, I'll look at it from two different perspectives. From more of the woo-woo perspective, I'll say, again, where your attention goes, your energy flows. So by simply doing that Roygbiv Check-In, it seems so simple, right? Like, how could that possibly, just running through these 7 points? If you run through them, your body and your energy will tell you where you're off a little bit or what's missing. As you talk through them, you'll just start to notice. And especially if you start doing it every day, you'll notice some differences in your day. If you practice this regularly, you will get very in tune. I think part of what had me create this system also is my work as a performer. As a singer, your body is your instrument. You get so used to being in tune with your body that, you just notice every tiny little thing, sometimes to your detriment. But sincerely, the more that you practice this, and even the very simple parts, like just walking yourself through that check-in, you will start to notice. On a less woo-woo side, like actually start to check in your results with the wheels. Here's what I've created or haven't created. Here's what's working. Here's what's out in my life. Which of these wheels would actually impact this? Yeah. And also, one last thing I'll put in, this is where accountability comes in. Whether you're remote or you work in an office full of people, build a team of trusted people around you who will actually reflect it to you. Who will actually say, hey, you're getting a lot done, but I haven't really gotten your heart, or I haven't felt connected to you in a while. Or I feel really lit up about this vision you're talking about, but I haven't seen any pages written from you this week. What's that about? Have some people, this is where a coach comes in, or a community, or a mastermind, or just your own personal board of advisors, whatever that means for you. But share the check-in with them and say, hey, let me know when you notice that something seems a little off with me energetically.
Well, and that was, another thought that came to mind. Have you used this with groups? Because I would imagine that with teams, it must be fascinating for people to go through this and, have a vulnerable enough environment to be able to share, so that, like you've mentioned throughout, you can see where someone is strong and taking the lead in one area, where you can learn from them, and kind of how the team is conformed with those different strengths and weaknesses.
Definitely. And I find something like this, this is one of the things that I love about coaching. With a lot of teams, I see people bring in like personality diagnostics and things like that. And it kind of gets you in this trap where you relate to yourself as, this is just how I am.
Yeah.
And a lot of times those diagnostics are pointing to your survival self, and then you're like, yeah, I'm just kind of self-righteous. That's just what I do. Deal with it. That didn't go over very well, and it keeps teams in some pretty familiar patterns. So using something like this, where you each get your own unique flavor of what leadership looks like and what your energy feels and shows up like when you're really tapped into yourself, can be very helpful. And it also gives people some new language to use with each other, so that it's not as personal. It's not a dig at John for being so cocky all the time. I actually I don't even know anybody named, John in that situation, just so we don't think I'm picking on poor John. But it gives you different access points to use to people. So you don't even have to point to the thing that stands out the most. You could ask, hey, John, tell me more about your connection to the company's mission and vision. Or, hey, what have you done to connect with so-and-so this week, to kind of have somebody drop into their heart a little bit more.
Yeah. Because that's, one thing that didn't really come up is, I think we're probably all a lot better at analyzing other people as opposed to analyzing ourselves. And so I think I could see, a few people came to mind as you went through the different 7, thinking, what would be a way to try and get other people to maybe, manage up or manage, across, and trying to get them to tap in. And it sounds like asking them some questions that are very targeted might come out of the blue, but might kind of help to serve that purpose a little bit.
Absolutely. And while I answer the rest of this, I'm going to share my screen, because we said you would get some contact information, and it's 12:59. So I want to make sure you actually have that. But yeah, just that reminder that, we're all mirrors for each other. So anytime one of these stands out to you in another person, it's likely a place for you to look as well, and take a look at how you're utilizing it or not.
Well, and this is great too, because the other question that came in was wondering what resources would you recommend for them to read up until your book comes out and they can check that out.
Yes, I'll give you, I created a resource list for my clients actually with some of my favorite books on these topics. Right off the first one that comes to mind right off the bat is a book called Getting Real. I cannot remember the author's name, of course, because you just asked me. But there's a book called Getting Real. It's about authentic communication. I found that one of the most impactful books that I've read in the last 10 years. So that's a great one. But if you want to reach out to me, or Mara, you could also collect this and kind of send it out if people don't want to reach out. Put this back up just for a moment. But yeah, I actually have a list of some resources of books, of podcasts, even of movies to watch that can have you see the different wheels in action and how it looks when they're overactive or underactive. So you can start to see it from the outside and look at how it might relate to you.
Fantastic. That's great. Thank you very, very much. I'll definitely share those. I'll send out an email to everyone participating, also with access to a survey, because I love to get your feedback to make sure that we can offer more webinars that relate to your interests. One final question is, a few people were asking if they could get a copy of the slides, if that's something you'd be comfortable sharing. Great, great. Thank you. And I want to thank everyone for joining us. As I mentioned at the beginning, a recording will be available on my website, the Alumni Career Development website, usually next week. And just thank you so much, Kacey. I learned so much throughout this journey, partnering with you to offer this webinar and today. I'm definitely going to be thinking about things very differently moving forward.
Thanks.
Wonderful, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Have a great day.